"I don't want to lose you as a friend," she said after rejecting me gently. I respected that and treated her exactly like everyone else. Now she's confused why the attention, effort, and priority she once had isn't there anymore. "You know you're literally my favorite person, right?" I didn't know what to say to that, because 3 weeks earlier, she had sat across from me at that same coffee table, in that same apartment, and told me she didn't feel the same way. And now she was looking at me with those exact eyes, warm, expectant, slightly confused, like she couldn't understand why the room felt different. It did feel different. I just wasn't going to be the one to explain why. Let me back up. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. I was 26. She was 25. We had been close for almost 2 years, the kind of close that doesn't have a clean label, which is exactly the kind of close that quietly destroys people. Her name was Claire. We met through a mutual friend at a small house gathering. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic. She was sitting on the kitchen counter eating chips out of a bowl, laughing at something someone said, and I remember thinking, whoever ends up with her is going to be exhausted in the best possible way. Within a month, we were texting every day. Within 3 months, she was calling me when things went wrong. Within 6 months, I was the person she came to first, before her best friend, before her sister, before anyone else. And I told myself that meant something. I didn't realize then that meaning something and meaning what I hoped it meant were two completely different things. I should tell you something about how I am, because it matters for what comes later. I'm not a guy who chases. I'm not loud about what I feel. When I care about someone, it shows in how I show up, not in what I say. I'm the person who remembers small things. The person who drives 40 minutes because you had a bad day and didn't ask him to. The person who knows your coffee order, your anxiety triggers, the name of the professor who made you cry sophomore year. I don't perform caring. I just do it. And with Claire, I did it completely. For almost 18 months, I was the consistent constant in her world. She'd call me at 11 p.m. because she couldn't sleep and we'd talk until 2, about nothing and everything. She'd text me a photo of something random, a street sign, a weird cloud, a dog she passed, because she knew I'd appreciate it. She came to my apartment with takeout on days I was quiet online, because she noticed I'd gone quiet. I noticed things about her. She noticed things about me. That felt like something. Maybe I was wrong about what it was, but I wasn't imagining that it was real. About 2 months before everything changed, something started shifting. Not drastically, just slightly. She started mentioning a guy from her work. Not in a significant way at first, just casually, the way you mention anyone. My coworker thinks the new policy is ridiculous too. "Oh, this guy from my office actually recommended that show." Small things. I noticed them and filed them away without attaching too much meaning. I'd been wrong about reading into things before. I didn't want to do that again. Then one Saturday, she canceled our standing plans. We had a thing. Every other Saturday, we'd either cook at one of our places or go somewhere low-key. It wasn't officially a date. It wasn't officially anything. But it had been happening consistently for almost a year, and neither of us had ever canceled it without giving plenty of notice. That Saturday, she texted me an hour beforehand. "Hey, something came up. Can we reschedule?" "Sorry." 3 question marks. 2 exclamation points. I said, "Of course, no problem. Let me know when you're free." She said she would. I didn't hear from her until the following Tuesday. I should have asked then. I know that now. But asking felt like making it a thing, and I didn't want to make it a thing. So I waited. And she came back around like nothing had changed, and for a little while, I convinced myself it hadn't. 3 weeks later, I told her how I felt. Not dramatically. Not with a speech or a playlist or a grand gesture. We were sitting in my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, takeout containers between us, some documentary neither of us was fully watching in the background. And it just came out. Not the way I'd imagined, honestly. There was no perfect opening. I just looked at her and said I needed to tell her something. She muted the TV. She turned toward me. She looked careful. And I told her, not everything at once, just the core of it, that I had feelings for her, that I wasn't trying to make anything weird, that I just needed her to know, because not saying it was starting to feel dishonest. She was quiet for a moment that felt like several. Then she took a slow breath and said, "I really care about you." I already knew what was coming. Those words, in that order, with that tone, they don't precede good news. She said she didn't feel the same way romantically. She said she'd been thinking about it, which told me she'd suspected something was coming, or maybe she'd been aware for a while. She said I was one of the most important people in her life. And then she said it. I don't want to lose you as a friend." I nodded. I told her I understood. I told her I appreciated her being honest with me. I meant all of it. I wasn't performing calm. I actually was calm, in that numb, immediate way you are before the full weight of something lands on you. She reached over and squeezed my hand. I let her. We sat there for another hour, talking about nothing, trying to normalize the air in the room. By the time she left, she seemed okay. I closed the door behind her and stood in my hallway for a long time. Here's what I decided that night. I wasn't going to punish her. I wasn't going to disappear dramatically. I wasn't going to become cold or hostile or passive-aggressive. But I also wasn't going to keep doing what I'd been doing. Not out of spite. Not out of bitterness. Just out of honesty. Because the friendship I'd been giving her wasn't a normal friendship. It was a friendship shaped by feelings I no longer had permission to have. And pretending I could keep offering everything I'd been offering, the priority, the constancy, the specific kind of attention that comes from caring about someone in a specific kind of way, felt like lying to both of us. So I recalibrated. Quietly. Without announcement. I didn't sit her down and explain it. I didn't send a message saying, "Things are going to be different now." I just adjusted. I responded to her text like I responded to anyone else's texts. When she reached out to make plans, I made them when I was free and rescheduled when I wasn't, the same way I'd handle it with anyone. I stopped being the person who noticed when she'd gone quiet online. I stopped tracking the small things and acting on them. I stopped being available at 11 p.m. by default, not because I was punishing her, but because that level of availability had never been something a friend deserved from me. It was something I'd been giving specifically because of how I felt, and how I felt had been addressed. The first few weeks, she didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she noticed, but thought it was just me processing things. She texted me normally. I replied normally. We hung out twice, once with a group, once just the two of us for coffee, and both times went fine. She seemed relieved, actually. Relieved that I wasn't being weird about it. Relieved that we were okay. I smiled at the right moments. I laughed genuinely when something was funny. I was present. I just wasn't prioritizing her the way I used to. About 5 weeks in, something small happened. She texted me on a Wednesday night. "Are you awake? Kind of having a rough night." 6 months ago, I would have called immediately. That night, I saw the message, thought about it, and replied. "Sorry to hear that. Hope it gets better. What's going on?" She replied with a summary. I said a few supportive things. Normal, kind, genuine, but not the 2 a.m. phone call it would have been before. She said thanks and good night. I could tell something had felt slightly off to her, but she didn't say anything. Not then. A week later, she asked if I wanted to do Saturday plans. I told her I already had something going. She said no worries. Next week? I said maybe, let me check. I did have something that Saturday for what it's worth. But the old version of me would have found a way to make both work. Or I'd have told the other thing to wait. That Saturday, I didn't do either. I went to the other thing. She texted me that evening with something funny that happened at her day. I replied with a laughing emoji and a short response. She sent a longer follow-up. I read it, smiled, and put my phone down. I want to be careful here about something. Because I know how this can sound. It can sound like a game. Like withdrawal as manipulation. Like I was creating distance to make her want me. That's not what it was. I want to be honest about what it actually was. It was me recognizing that what I'd been giving her was never actually friendship-grade investment. It was more. And if I kept giving more, I was lying to myself about having moved on, and I was lying to her about what our dynamic actually was. She had told me what she wanted, a friend. I was going to be exactly that. A real one. Not a devoted, secretly in love with you one. An actual friend. Friends don't drop everything when you text at 11 p.m. Friends don't rearrange their Saturdays on an hour's notice. Friends are happy to see you and also have their own lives with their own textures. That's what I became. About 2 months after the conversation, she started acting differently around me. Small things at first. She'd text more than usual, not necessarily about anything specific, just checking in. More "what are you up to" messages. More tagging me in random things online. More initiating. I responded warmly, but normally, the way I'd respond to anyone. Then one night she called me. Not texted. Actually called, which had become less common since I'd stopped being the late-night call guy. I picked up. She said she just wanted to talk. We talked for a while, normal conversation, nothing heavy. But near the end, she said something that stuck with me. "You seem different lately." "How so?" She was quiet for a second. "I don't know. Less like yourself, I guess. Like you're here, but not fully here." I thought about that. "I think I'm just busy," I said. "Things have been a lot." She accepted that, but I could hear in her voice that she didn't fully believe it. 2 weeks after that call, we were at a group hangout. Mutual friends, someone's rooftop, early summer warmth. Good evening. I was in a good mood, talking to people, not particularly hovering near her. At one point I was across the rooftop, deep in a conversation with a friend of mine, and I looked over and caught her watching me. Not obviously, but watching. The way you watch something that's moved further away from you, and you're trying to figure out how far it's gone. I smiled at her. She smiled back. I went back to my conversation. Later that night, as people were filtering out, she ended up beside me. Can I ask you something? Sure. She looked at her shoes briefly, then at me. Are you okay? Like with us? With how things are? Yeah, I said. Why? I just feel like something shifted, and I can't tell if it's in my head. I was honest with her. Things did shift a little, I said. I think that's natural. I had to figure out where I stood. I think I'm good now. She nodded slowly. But we're okay? Like, you still want to be friends? Of course. She exhaled, this small, relieved breath. Okay, good. Because I'd really hate to lose you. I walked home that night thinking about that. I'd really hate to lose you. 3 months earlier, I don't want to lose you as a friend. I hadn't gone anywhere. I was still there. Still warm. Still genuine. Still showing up when it mattered. But I wasn't exclusively orbiting her anymore. And she could feel the gravitational difference. A few weeks later, something happened that I didn't see coming. She told me about the guy from work. Not casually this time. Fully. His name was Owen. They'd been seeing each other since a little after our conversation, which explained the canceled Saturday, the gradual shift, the careful way she'd handled my feelings. She had already been falling for him when I told her how I felt. She just hadn't known how to tell me. I thanked her for telling me, and I meant it, because knowing that reframed everything for me in a way that actually helped. It wasn't that she'd evaluated me and found me lacking. It was that she'd already started wanting someone else, and I just happened to be confessing feelings she no longer had bandwidth for. That's a different kind of pain. Cleaner, somehow. But here's where the story gets more complicated. About a month after she told me about Owen, things apparently weren't going great with him. She didn't say that directly, but she started texting me more. The late-night availability she'd once relied on. She seemed to be testing whether it still existed. And she seemed quietly frustrated when she discovered that it mostly didn't. Not in a way she expressed outwardly. Just in small friction. Shorter replies from her when my replies were normal length. A slightly different energy when we'd been out of contact for a few days. One evening she texted me, "Hey, are you free tonight?" I wasn't. I had plans with a friend I'd been meaning to see. I told her I was busy, but we could figure out another time. She said, "Oh, okay," in that particular way that isn't fully okay. I asked if everything was all right. She said yeah. She just wanted to hang, no big deal. I said I'd reach out later in the week. She said sure. I noticed that she didn't reach out first for the following 4 days. When we finally did meet up, coffee on a weekday afternoon, there was something different about her energy. She seemed frustrated, but beneath it she seemed confused. Like she was trying to solve an equation that wasn't adding up. We talked about normal things for a while. Then she said something interesting. You know what I've been thinking about lately? What? How we used to just talk. All the time. Remember when we'd be on the phone for hours? Yeah. I miss that. I looked at her. She was being genuine. We still talk, I said. It's different now though. Things change, I said. That's okay. She was quiet for a moment. Did I do something? That question cost her something to ask. I could see it on her face. No, I said. And I meant it. You didn't do anything wrong. But here is where I have to be fully honest, because honesty is the whole point of telling this. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd handled the situation with more gentleness than most people would have. She genuinely wanted to keep the friendship. The confusion she was feeling now wasn't malicious. She wasn't realizing she'd made a mistake and wanting me back. She was experiencing the loss of something she'd taken for granted. The specific, particular, tailored version of care that had existed in our dynamic, the version that had been quietly powered by feelings she hadn't reciprocated, was gone. Not because I was punishing her for not loving me, but because I'd actually done the work of adjusting. And what she was bumping into wasn't absence. It was reality. Can I be honest with you about something? She asked. Always. When you told me how you felt, before, I was scared that things would get weird. Or that you'd pull away. Or that it would ruin everything. I know. And they didn't get weird. You didn't pull away. And I was so relieved. I thought we'd gotten through it perfectly. We did. Then why does it feel like you're further away? I thought about how to answer that. I don't think I'm further away. I said. I think you got used to a version of closeness that was a specific kind, and I can't offer that specific kind anymore. I'm still here, just differently here. She absorbed that. Because of your feelings? Because of honesty, I said. I was giving you things that come from a specific place. That place changed. So what I give looks different now. She didn't say anything for a while. Then, that makes sense. Pause. I guess I just didn't realize how much of what you gave me was connected to that. Most people don't, I said, until it shifts. What followed was the most honest conversation we'd had in 2 years. She admitted that she'd gotten comfortable with a level of attention that, looking back, she recognized wasn't just friendship. She admitted that part of her had known for a while that I had feelings, and she'd allowed the dynamic to continue because it was warm and comfortable and she hadn't wanted to disrupt it. She wasn't proud of that. She said it directly and clearly and without making excuses. I respected that. I told her I'd also let it go on longer than I should have because I'd convinced myself that closeness was enough or that it might become something else. We'd both been a little dishonest. Not maliciously, just humanly. Here's what didn't happen, just to be clear. She didn't confess feelings for me. She didn't break up with Owen and realize she'd wanted me all along. This isn't that story. This story doesn't end with the narrator getting the girl. It ends with something less cinematic, but more real. We stayed friends. Actually this time. Not the shape of friendship with the weight of something else underneath it. Actually friends. She stopped expecting the 11 p.m. calls, and I stopped feeling like I owed them. She planned things with me in the same way she'd planned things with any close friend. With normal notice, normal flexibility, normal back and forth. I showed up with warmth and without agenda. It was easier, in an odd way. Lighter. Like we'd both put down something heavy and neither of us had wanted to be the first one to admit we were holding it. Owen and she broke up about 4 months later. She told me on a call, casually, like it wasn't a test. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said it was fine, it had run its course. I didn't rush to fill any new space that created. She didn't seem to expect me to. We made plans to get food the following week. It was a good evening. Normal. Easy. There's a thing that people say when they get rejected gently. I don't want to lose you as a friend. It's a real thing to say. It's usually genuine. But there's an assumption buried in it that nobody talks about. The assumption is that the friendship on offer is the same friendship that already exists. That nothing will change. That the person who was giving everything will simply keep giving everything, minus the feelings. That's not how it works. Because what was being offered before wasn't neutral friendship. It was care that exceeded friendship, filtered through feelings that were never acknowledged. When the feelings get addressed, when the door gets closed, the care recalibrates. Not to nothing, not to coldness, just to what it would have looked like without the hidden layer underneath. And that recalibration can feel, to the person who received all that extra warmth, like something was taken. But nothing was taken. Something was just finally accurately named. The thing I've sat with the most, looking back, isn't the rejection. The rejection was fine. She was honest and kind, and I had enough self-respect not to come apart over it. The thing I've sat with is the 2 years before the rejection. 2 years of treating one person like she was the center of my world. 2 years of giving her a specific quality of attention that I hadn't given anyone else. And the question I had to ask myself honestly was, how much of that was about her? And how much of that was about the story I was telling myself? She was remarkable. I want to be clear about that. She's funny and perceptive and genuinely one of the warmest people I know. Nothing I'm saying is meant to diminish her. But I'd also been building a version of her in my head. This elevated, idealized version that justified every extra mile I drove, every late night I stayed awake, every priority I rearranged. And real people can't live up to the versions you construct of them. They're not supposed to. They're just people. She was just a person I cared about, and a person who didn't feel the same way, and a person who wanted to stay friends. All of which were true simultaneously, and none of which required me to keep operating on the same settings I had before. I'm 27 now, almost a year since that coffee table conversation where I told her how I felt. We're still friends. Good ones, actually. The real kind, where both people show up because they want to, not because one of them is quietly hoping the rules will change. She's dating someone new. She seems happy. I've met someone too. Early stages, nothing dramatic, but different. More equal from the beginning. Not this slow accumulation of distance between what I was feeling and what was being acknowledged. If I could tell the version of me from 2.5 years ago one thing, it would be this. The amount you're willing to give someone is not a measure of how much they deserve it. It's a measure of how much you want to give. Those are different things. Give people the version of yourself they've earned, not the version your feelings are trying to justify. The last thing I'll say is about that question she asked me on the rooftop. Are we okay? And I said yes. And I meant it. Because we were. Just not the version of okay that she'd been comfortable in. The kind of okay that doesn't require anyone to pretend. The kind that doesn't need one person standing slightly closer than they should be, waiting for something that was never going to come. Just two people. In the same room. At the same distance. Finally. She still calls me her favorite person sometimes. I smile when she says it. It's true, probably. In a way she means genuinely. But it lands differently now. Not like something I need. Just like something nice to hear. She said she didn't want to lose me as a friend. She didn't. She just got a different version of what that actually looks like. Turns out that's what she'd had all along. She just hadn't known it until the extra layer was gone.